There are, of course, several difficulties associated with helping our learners improve their grammar. One of them is that many learners, teenagers especially, don't worry about grammar very much, except for tests and exams, of course. They don't pay much attention to it when they're reading, and they often don't pay attention to it when they're writing or speaking either. But noticing grammar and noticing the gap between their own grammar and what native speakers do is an important step in grammar learning. So here's an activity designed to get some noticing going. Here you can see part of a text from a course book. The overall theme is inventions, with some focus on the use of past continuous and past simple. Let's imagine that the learners have read the text, they've answered questions on it, and in general, they're fairly familiar with its content. Now, towards the end of the lesson, or even in another lesson a day or two later, ask learners to open and read this bit of the text again. They need to try to commit as much of it to memory as possible. Give them a time limit to do this, say 1 minute, perhaps 2, but certainly not more than that for a text this long. Then, the learners close their books and the teacher shows them this reduced, truncated version. It can be on paper or on the board, or if you have an interactive whiteboard, you can do it very easily. The task for the learners is to use the prompts that they have here to try to write the text exactly as they read it in the book. They use their memory and their grammar knowledge to reconstruct the text from the prompts. They can do this individually, but working in pairs or groups of 3 often brings much more positive results. Now, when the learners have finished writing their texts, usually what they want to do is see if they got it right. So tell them to open their books and to compare their texts with the original. Now, what usually happens is that the students start to do this. As the learners read and check. Now, what are they doing? They're looking very carefully at the 2 texts and noticing if there are differences, and if there are differences, noticing what they are. They're looking at articles, prepositions, conjunctions, pronouns, all those little words that they normally don't pay any attention to at all. Now, of course, if the learners have something different from the original, it may not necessarily be wrong. So it's useful if you, the teacher, move around looking and helping too. It's this final stage, when the learners compare their text with the original, that is the central part of the activity. So it's crucial to let the learners do the comparing themselves. If you, the teacher, feel a strange temptation to collect in their texts, take them back home and mark them, then give them back, well, I suggest you resist the temptation as much as you can. Because it's precisely when your learners are comparing that there's a chance of that aha moment. That moment when learners notice something they'd never noticed before or understood before. Now, this activity doesn't take long to prepare. Just take a piece of text that your learners have already read and reduce it to some of the main content words, as in the example we've looked at. If you take more words out, of course, the task gets harder for the learners. Leave more words in, and it gets easier. You decide how hard you want the activity to be. The more often you do the activity, and the more familiar learners get with it, the more you can push them by giving them more heavily reduced texts. But importantly, keep the content words and take out the function words, the articles, prepositions, conjunctions, pronouns, and so on. Because then the task gets learners to grammaticize, to take the words and add the grammar, basically. And this is an important thing to do for grammar development. Now, this activity is not designed to teach learners any particular bits of grammar. The learning outcomes are not predictable, and different learners may, and probably will, notice different things and pay attention to different things. But the activity is useful in getting learners to look at details of grammar in a way that they otherwise probably wouldn't do.